I'm crawling through here and then wrote a note and put it onto my desk. Keep me honest.
There's just a few more people trying to get in, so we'll get started in a couple of minutes. All right, kia ora everybody, and welcome to our Coaches Huddle this week. This week we're very lucky to have Mark Sorenson and Jarrad Martin with us as the Black Sox and Junior Black Sox coaches respectively. As usual, we've got Ricky asking the hard questions. If you do have any questions that you'd like to ask during the session, please put them in the chat function and we'll bring them up at the end. But otherwise, I'll pass on to Ricky to get started. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jarrad. And I'd say thanks, Gareth, sorry, and thanks for getting along a couple of very knowledgeable softballers that I've been involved with a little bit over my time as a player and coaching as well. And I think they'll be very insightful tonight into a few probing questions we're going to ask them, and we'll roll along with a few of their answers, and hopefully it comes up with some good knowledge, general knowledge out to the softballing public. So, Jose, welcome along, mate.
Yeah.
How are you,
hey,
Jez?
Yeah, all good, thanks, man.
Good, mate.
Yeah.
Bro, how you going, buddy?
Oh, great, mate. Another glorious day down here in the capital.
That's it, mate. Rub it in outside. You know, we get that once a day in this prison up here. We're at an hour out in the courtyard. It's all allowed. Don't you dare pull up a beer or a coffee from the local cafe that you've just been to for dinner or anything like that.
Yeah, okay.
Battling away, mate. Hey, fellas, yeah, great to have you along. Like I just said, I think you're going to be very insightful, and we'll roll through a few little questions we've got here, but we may go off the cuff, and I may put you on the spot a little bit. So first, Mark, and then Jarrad, you jump in after Brew. What made you take up coaching in the first place, Mark?
It was really still I had a passion for the game, Rick. You know, I love the sport and I love the Black Sox, and what we stand for and how hard we work. And, I'd respected the work that, the Don Trickers and the Eddies and the Mike Walshes had done through, Don and especially Mike through my time as playing. And then watched from afar and admired what Eddie had done. And, I wanted to contribute and continue on with that legacy. And, I think we obviously punch above our weight down here, competing against the world's best, and wanted to have a contribution to, continuing on with that legacy. So, it got to the stage where there was a gap between ability and ambition. And so I knew I couldn't hit three and catch anymore. So if I wanted to still control things, I needed to go down to the coach's box.
Was there a specific reason why you didn't jump straight into it, mate? Was it work or family, or you just thought you needed to separate yourself a little bit? You see some players that jump straight into it, even in international rugby or whatever, and 1 year they're a player, next year they're the boss. Was there a premeditated thought or reason you did that?
I had a divorce. That was quite a big part of it.
It does that, yeah. We all know that. All three on the panel, yes.
I actually got to the stage at the end of my playing days, Rick, where I needed a break. And I think, in all honesty, the sport needed a break from me. So it was good for me to get away and refresh and, think about the things that were important and, link back to the things that I talked about at the start. That, I'm a lifer for the game and I'll always have an involvement in some shape or form. But, under the current hat, it's, the governor for the Sox. So have enjoyed, my tenure as holding the flame. Without COVID, who knows where we would have been now, but certainly after our result in Prague, there's a bit of unfinished business for me.
Yeah, and Jazz, you're a little bit the same, mate. You could have easily just tucked away in the pastures of Waitara there and gone on with your business and your family and been very happy. But after a few years, you sort of came out of the softball wilderness from being, one of our greatest players to, putting your hand up and helping at this sort of level with the junior Black Sox.
Yeah, well, like Mark too, Rick, I finished my last year was 2013, and it was straight after that final game. I got asked the question by Larry, did I want to be involved with the junior program? And, I'd never really, up until then, I hadn't thought about, moving into a coaching role. But, likewise, softball at that stage, half of my life was spent playing it, traveling it, at that time. And so, I, had to have a bit of a think about it. And, it did, interest me straight off the bat. But, we had a bit of celebrating to do that night, mate, before I made a decision doing that. But, then I talked to my wife and she was all for it, supportive. And so I thought, let's do it. And, what a way to start was actually, with these young junior kids, because, everyone starts somewhere, and, I did as well. And being in that age bracket, with yourself, it was a lot of fun. So to be able to see it from, the other side of the fence, I suppose you could say, or the other side of the diamond, I thought, you can give this one a go. And as it's been, and you've, been tagged along on a few of our tours, we've had some successes, and as of late, the last campaign wasn't so successful. So, so now that I've, I guess, taken over the reins, and it's a challenge that I'm looking forward to, but a challenge that I'm hoping is going to happen, because I'm not too sure where we're at, because the goalposts keep getting moved every bloody year. Going from naming 36 guys 2 years ago to telling them a year later, sorry guys, you guys are ineligible, you're too old. When WBSC had changed dates and changed obviously the way they wanted to run things. So now we've got a new group of kids that we've got to work with, and to be honest, mate, I don't know any of their backgrounds. Some of them I do. So for us, as the management staff, it'll be a tough job, but we'll get there. eventually, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think, and just touching, I think it affects both of you is probably when you talk about it, Jazz, you just come off a career with the Black Sox in 2013. You've probably been, a full-time player for a good 15 years, at least going backwards and forwards to the States. Mark, you were the same, so I guess that first question you got to ask is to the wife, isn't it? It's, you've been away from the family, and if they don't travel, north side with you to play the off season, you're away from the family a lot. So it is another big draw to say, okay, I'm hanging up the boots and supposedly going to spend time with you, but now Larry's got me doing this, and Mark's off. I'm going to do that. So yeah, it is a big thank you, I guess, to the wives and families, and the kids that don't see dad or mum when they're on a national program, because there's training camps, there's tours to Aussie or stuff like that, and you're away a hell of a lot, eh?
Yeah, we are, and like you said, going from playing and traveling to then all of a sudden, we're off to North America, or we did a trip to Europe. So we were doing something every year, so nothing had really changed. We were still, on the travel bug, and but like people talk about making sacrifices and that. Yeah, that's cool, but it's something that we love, so it's not really a sacrifice for us. It's something that we've always wanted to do. So if we didn't have, like Mark said, the passion and that to pursue what we're doing, then hey, we wouldn't be here. Yeah.
Coaching philosophies, I'll probably go back to you, Brew, and I think both of you will probably have the one person in common that you have taken a bit of knowledge from. But obviously, Mark, your dad installed some coaching philosophies in you early on. But what other coaches and philosophies have you carried through to now with the Black Sox?
Yeah, I think I'm really fortunate, and Jazza was a part of it as well, that we played under two very, very good. Well, I played under only two coaches in 20 years, which is pretty weird. But, with Mike Walsh and then Don Tricker, and both, Max was or Mike Mad Max, he was mental as a snake, but great planner, really well structured, really well organized, really great attention to detail. And then, moving on to Tricks, and he was a fantastic man manager. I don't, and Jarrad probably is the same. I don't recall Don ever giving a signal on the diamond, but he got some of the greatest outcomes and performances of Black Sox teams ever, with the way that our teams performed over that time. So in terms of in terms of my own personal philosophy, it wasn't about reinventing the wheel. It was taking the things that I'd learned from Mike and from Don around, managing people and planning well ahead and leaving no rock unturned to ensure that we create an environment that was conducive to successful performance. So taking, talented young Kiwis that are prepared to roll up their sleeves and take on the world. And, it had been a successful recipe for so long, but it just tweaks a little bit around. Sorry, my son was just calling out from. Yeah, hi, mate. Those talented young athletes that are prepared to forget about the size of the opposition in terms of numbers and money and everything like that, but rolling your sleeves up to have a real crack. And the role of a head coach nowadays is certainly, there's a lot of facilitation. It's a lot of communication. It's a lot of connection. And it's sometimes about tweaking techniques and approaches. But the one thing I learned about Don about the strategy and philosophy of coaching is that if you create the right environment off the diamond, the on-diamond performance takes care of itself. So, you get a group of guys that are prepared to work for each other, you can overcome great odds.
I suppose, and I'll go to you, Jazz, as well, is that I suppose your role, Mark, at the elite level with the Black Sox, it is a lot more man management and technical. Jazz, yours has changed with your time with the juniors. where you've gone from an under 19 campaign where you've got 18 and just turning 19-year-olds. With the last campaign, you had some 16-year-olds there. It's a hell of a difference in skill level, strength, and all that sort of stuff. So man management isn't as big a part of your role, Jazz, as it is with Mark.
No, exactly. And, I guess earlier years with the juniors, we were able to probably try and, drill these kids like they were young men. And, our philosophy at the time was, how can we get these players in a shape and form so as, they're going to progress to the next level. Some of them are, and it was how do we make that transition easier for them? So from what we'd learned as players, in the Black Sox environment, is what we tried to instill into the younger guys. So those guys like Cole Evans who are coming through, and Bradley Bennett's, from up in your area, and as it was, we it was tough for them, to learn things the way we sort of taught them. But I think they've come out on the other side pretty well. And for us, probably cutting it short is that we actually got quite a lot of the kids from those previous campaigns across the line into Mark's team. And that wasn't by, default. It was just by, them working hard. And, they all had that natural ability. They all knew how to play, but for us, it was just trying to educate them how it's going to be, moving to that next level. But for this newer bunch, the kids are a bit younger. We've got to be a little bit careful how we approach. We can't take that same approach into these younger kids, I don't think. But it's more, again, once if you can create a good environment off the diamond, it make it enjoyable for the kids, but also teach them that they've got to obviously have an element of punch in them, because it's not about just participating. It's about winning, and that's something that we haven't done well in the last couple of years. So there you go.
Yes, I suppose when you first came into the role with Thomas, I think it was a major focus was on that pathway and getting them on that same pathway, so that when they got to Mark or Eddie or whoever it was, that, or in the future that takes it as well, is that when they get there, they're not having to go back and teach them things that 60% of the squad already know. Obviously, you love to win, and that's a big part of it. And I guess that pathway is also creating winning cultures, isn't it? Because that's the Black Sox main MO, is that they win, or they're there to win anyway. And I think that's the biggest thing, isn't it, for the boys coming through, as well as a little bit more technical stuff you've got to teach the younger ones.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's there's going to be a lot of technical and tactical stuff, to be honest. Because they're only coming off under 15 grades, and so that's we're looking at those under 15 kids for 2 years' time, because they're going to be your 17, 18-year-olds. So it's just seeing where they're at in terms of their skill level and their game sense, really. But we'll get it, if we can, and these regional tournaments go ahead, then we'll get to see quite a lot.
Go back to you, Mark. Apart from the obvious environment over the last 18 months, what's been your biggest challenge so far in coaching?
The weight of expectation, probably.
Mm-hmm.
It's as you've talked about. There's an expectation that the Black Sox win all the time. And whilst we're a minority sport, we got the same expectation as the All Blacks, And look what's happened to poor old Aussie over the last couple of days. So that expectation, but the standards that are expected of us are no greater than the standards that we set ourselves. And for me, I guess back in the beginning when I started coaching, it was more about what I couldn't do as the athlete anymore, and what I needed to do in terms of preparing the athletes. I remember the first series coaching in Auckland that we had against Australia, and I almost wanted to walk from the coach's box down to the batter's box. I was a little bit lost at third base there. But yeah, so it was quite a transition to understanding, where my happy place was. And I struggled early because I was so used to controlling how the game flowed through being behind the plate or being at the plate hitting, that I needed to find a different way to control the game from the third base coach's box, because that had been my MO as a player, controlling the flow of the game, speeding it up, slowing it down, offering advice and support, intimidating the opposition, those type of things. And I just needed to, I guess, relearn my craft and how it fit in with my new role in the third base coach's box or the dugout.
Jazz, your biggest challenge, mate, would it have to be? Oh, sorry, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but yeah, that step back in that grade, and how big a year is different from a 18-year-old to a 7-year-old, or 16.
Yeah, it is different. I mean, we had 3 or nearly 4 years to plan. Then it's getting shorter and shorter now. So we're about 2 years, a little over 2 years out maybe. But it's I think, like I mentioned earlier, the young kids, it's about bringing them into an environment. They're going to be shit scared, I think, some of them, because they hadn't been around it a lot. But it's trying to make them feel at ease in our environment, to teach them that things, there will be an element of time where you're going to have fun, and there will be times where you're going to have to knuckle down, and that's what we've got to try and get across the line, I think, initially. I'm probably lucky to have a couple of assistants in Bevan and Curtis Tompkins, who are both high school teachers. So they all the kids know, or they know how the kids roll at that age, and that's what we built our strategic plan around. And that still stayed the same from the last the group that obviously didn't make the cut, but we've still got the same things in there that we're going to bring forward to this new bunch of kids. And but we've got a very quick turnaround, and I think we can get there as long as we we've got the numbers to select from.
We'll start with you, Jazz, while we're moving to a little bit more technical, and it probably is quite relevant for you at the moment. The question is, what do you take into consideration when selecting a wider training squad compared to a touring squad, and probably not necessarily your final 16 for a World Cup or something like that?
Well, obviously, we looked over the past, I guess, results from tournaments, and there were a lot of consistencies there with, players. The same players every year were coming through, in terms of stats and in terms of, positional play, where they were playing, and their names keep coming up. So, those guys must know a little bit about the game. So, there are those kids there. Then you've got to take a look at, some of the I guess, the backgrounds of some of the families. There might be kids like, little earlies that are out there that, actually, coming from a great softball family. So, they have an idea about things as well. So things like that, you look at, at school, you follow them with their winter codes. And actually, a lot of these kids in our squad now play, whether it be representative rugby, soccer, rugby league. They're all involved somewhere or somehow with their first or second 15. So, so for them, that gives us a bit of an inch to say, hey, they've got a bit of toughness in them, because with rugby players and league players and soccer players, they're all running around all over the park and under stress a lot of times. So, and if they're performing under that stress and doing well, then they must have something valuable within themselves.
And just for you again, Jazz, before we go to Mark, is like, you go through the baseball and all the the 5-tool player, and you talk about the scouts. You read about them, and they're looking for arm strength and this speed and clocking this and doing that and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, you look for those sort of KPIs and players, and you look at stats at tournaments and all that. From your own personal point of view, if you're at a tournament just looking around and you see a player, the cut of his jib, what's something that sticks out for you or you're looking for straight away? He could be a little kid smaller than the rest of them, or it could be a big boy that's carrying a bit more. What sticks out for you and you're like, hey, I like that kid, I can work with him?
Yeah, well, I think regardless of what size the kid is, if he can hit, if he can run, I'll find a spot for him. I don't care if he's 200 pounds or, at 15 years old, but if he can hit a ball, 9 times out of 10, he's going to be in my team. It doesn't bother me if he, can't run 20 yards in, 3 seconds. All I need him to do is hit the ball, as far as he can, or get the first, and then we'll find someone to run around the bases for him. But, in our squads we've had in the past, we've had kids like that, but we molded ourselves on being quick and fit, and so we probably discarded some kids who were, like you're saying, that had the bigger build and didn't quite fit our ideals in terms of our plans for our ideal team. But now I just think, and I'm looking at other countries too, in other countries who are now probably a step further or higher than what we are, and an example was Argentina. And you would have seen at the last tournament too. They had some rather, big, powerful kids. But if they're good enough, then why not put them in?
And Mark, I know again you like people with a little bit of munger and a little bit of fight at the plate. Tough out, quality at bats. The Jackson Watt sort of a guy. Is that the sort of person you look for outside of the main statistical parameters and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to Jazz, although we're really pushing hard around conditioning at the moment, as you would have seen. But things that stand out for me is softball IQ, so game smarts, and that's something that you can't teach. Those natural instincts on the diamond. Someone that with a ball that bounces in the dirt in front of the catcher, but it goes off to the catcher's right, they take third base from second. That type of softball instinct, that softball IQ is invaluable. Unselfish play is something that is really big for me in terms of someone that's prepared to do something for the team rather than their own stat line. Because we haven't stopped looking at batting average, but we've put it down the priority list. It's more about what's a little bit of money ball, actually. It's about on base percentage. How many times can the guys get on base? Do they have the ability to get on base? Because, we set ourselves a target of scoring 4 runs a game offensively, and we know that we can convert 40% of our base runners that get on base. So having guys, if we get 10 guys on base, we're going to get our 4 runs. So, over the 7 innings, that's how we're breaking it down, is that we need guys that have the ability to get on base. I don't want guys trying to hit a grand slam with no one on base. I'd much rather they have the ability to get on base, pass the mantle to the guy behind them. And then other than the first time through their batting order, your role can change each time. So, I want everybody to have the ability to bunt for a single, to squeeze, to be able to slap, to be able to drive the ball out of the park. But we really, we've been trying to develop multi-skilled athletes that if our plan A doesn't work, we've actually got a plan B up our sleeve. And that links into that sort of unselfish behaviour that, I really want to see from our guys, especially at our level around, working for each other and working alongside your teammates rather than trying to do it all yourself. Because it's something that I've seen through our playing days with Jarrad and then certainly in our 17 campaign, Whitehorse, it was there. And it's a really traditional Kiwi style of ball. But sometimes we get distracted by North American style of ball, which is more of a power-oriented game. You get a couple of guys on base, someone tries to hit a home run. But, for the Black Sox, I want us accumulating runs, sneaking a run in the first, sneaking a run in the third, another one in the fourth, and all of a sudden that 2 or 3 run home run comes in, and we can blow teams out of the water. But that's the cream on the cake, as opposed to what we're relying on solely as our MO to score runs. So it sort of links in with the type of athlete that we're looking for, looking around the park, and it may surprise people that we look at the stat board, but it's not so much about batting average, because there's a lot of guys that do really well Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but don't do so well Saturday, Sunday in the tournament. And I've been at the tournaments, we've been asking the statisticians to give us stats from the playoffs. Who are the guys that step up when the game really matters, not the round robin robbers, that pick up their hits during the round robin rather than in the big stuff. But they, because those guys still come out with a 400, 450 average, which sort of masks the overall performance.
I suppose it's horses for courses, isn't it? With if you throw your 04 lineup from Christchurch at anyone, well, you probably don't have to bunt, steal, slap, squeeze. With that lineup you had there offensively, it was untouchable. But I think, that's what you're saying, is we've got to evolve. We've got to evolve with the cattle that we've got, and that's what you have to do now. Which probably leads into one of the next questions. Is we know fitness is important. Do you believe it needs to be incorporated into team trainings, or that's something you do on your own? I know the Black Sox have fitness trainings, and you've got KPIs, and you're monitoring all that. Is it important to be part of the team training, or it is a little bit of a guide as to, in between testings, what those guys have gone and done when no one's watching? That sort of approach.
I think to have it a part of trainings is a good thing. Because not everybody's going to have the same drivers in terms of success. And if you go to, let's say, club level, you're going to have a handful of guys that want to go on and play provincial stuff. But you can make those other guys better through having, some leadership from your guys that want to go on to provincial stuff, and that leadership comes in different forms. And having them driving some conditioning sessions where everybody gets fitter can help push the other guys higher that go on to provincial level. And the same at provincial level. Guys that want to go to national level, and there's probably only a handful that can go on to national level. So I'm certainly a fan that that it should be part of all trainings. And it doesn't need to be running miles and miles or anything like that. But the conditioning can be in different shapes and form. It doesn't, it can be skills and drills that are driven from station to station. You might have 15 minutes at the start of a training where you guys are doing skills and drills, which actually gets their heart rate up and works on conditioning without them actually knowing about it. But it then is also a critical part of your own personal training, I think, each week. I know that when I played, my own conditioning was 4 or 5 days a week outside of what we did from a team, So I think there's an element for both, because ultimately the individual, the athlete, is responsible for their own conditioning. That if they rely on team trainers to get fit, it's a strategy that's fraught with danger, because you won't reach the heights that you need to. So working alongside different people at different times will help drive you higher.
And Jazz, I'll go to you, and we'll talk about that with regard to the junior Black Sox. But I also want you to touch a little bit on what I believe from Don Tricker before 04, which the team you were captain of, Jazz, is that, and I think it came from a lot of the rugby stuff with the Jim Blair, where you do a lot of skill stuff under fatigue. I think he purposely had you playing double headers at 9 o'clock at night, finishing at midnight, up at 5 in the morning, so you're absolutely buggered and all that sort of stuff. And then by the time you got to the World Series, you're playing one game and you're like fresh as a flower. And this is easy after what he's put us through. And that's the nutty professor himself, isn't it, Don? Getting that. So it's not the physical; it's the mental training, isn't it?
Yeah. I think mental training is a massive thing, and and like Bruce said as well, about the conditioning for each athlete should be done, in their own time. And at this level, I think it should be a non-negotiable that, guys should be fit, turning up to camps and turning up to tours in shape. You can monitor that as best as you can, but that's why you do have camps and you do have testing, because that's where guys get found out. If they're not fit, they don't meet the mark, then there's obviously some issues there. So they may be the best players in your team, but if they're not doing the work like the other guys, then then they're not doing as good as everyone else is, and they're not being a team man. They've been quite selfish at times. So, but for our kids, to get them, and like I said, that some of them are playing winter codes and top level winter codes, so they will have an element of resilience in there, which was a big thing that, big slogan we used in 2004, because, we were pretty tough and it didn't matter who you put up against us. We stood in front of them pretty well. And to get that across to the 15 and 16-year-old kids, it's going to be hard, but then that's up to us. We've got to find ways to put them under fatigue, which is where I think in the past the drill camps and the army bases were pretty good for our boys, because when you turn up the camps, you think it's all solely softball, and when you surprise the kids and it's spending a whole weekend carrying logs around or carrying your mates around or whatever, and that's where you find out who are team players as well, and who's not pulling their weight. And that's how you can split, a squad of 36 down to 20 in a heartbeat, because you'll find that there'll be a lot of leaders and there'll be a lot of followers. So, for us, I'd like us to be able to have, a squad full of leaders. And then, that'll make our job a lot more difficult. So, but like you said earlier, there could be kids that are followers, but they might have, we might have an instinct that they have something. So then you have to revisit him and look at him and, just see what else he's got under his belt to, give him a chance, because we want to try and give everyone an opportunity, as best an opportunity as we can, so as they can all, be selected in our team, in our final team.
Yeah, as a wise man that played with both of us at different times, he's an advocate that our game is based around explosive power and speed. The furthest we'll ever run at any one time in the game is just under 80 meters, which is a round trip around the bases. And you can then go in and recover and go again, which I totally agree with. So, strength and conditioning is huge, and it's a big part of our game. But it's that third game on a Sunday of a world championship or a national tournament where you've been out in the sun for 3 or 4 or 6 days prior to that, and it's your mental sharpness that will fail if you are not physically fit. So we don't, you're not expected to run a marathon on a Sunday afternoon, but you're expected to do something at 100% on a Sunday afternoon as you did the previous Saturday of a world championship or a Thursday of a national championship. Agree?
Yeah, agree, exactly, because when you go to North America and the temperatures are 100 degrees Fahrenheit plus on the third game, and championship game, you've got to be, and it's the concentration. You've got to concentrate for 7 innings, could be 10 innings, but if it's a third game, that's the 22nd inning or third inning, comes up and hang on, that'll be 4 games. I'll be talking 21 innings. So
might have gone extras.
Yeah, but it's just if you're not physically fit, the mental stuff is pretty hard unless you've got that naturally. But I don't think many people have that naturally. There's a lot of naturally talented and gifted athletes, but do they have that mental toughness? Don't know. Yeah.
So, Mark, that sort of mental fatigue, is that what Trix was trying to simulate prior to the 04 series? Was, on the last day when you guys are meant to be exhausted, you're going to be fresh because I put you in an even darker place even before the first pitch of the World Champs.
Yeah, I think to sum it up, Rick, is that what that mental toughness does is when you're behind, it prevents you from looking at the scoreboard and have the scoreboard dictate your approach, because you're able to stay on task and you're able to stay on your strategy. So you talked about before with us around quality at bats, so in 17, we were losing to Australia in the final, and our ability to not let the scoreboard dictate the way we approached our at bats. So that mental toughness allowed us the ability to have a run at it and take it off the Aussies. Where if we hadn't been mentally tough, which came from physical conditioning, we would have looked at the scoreboard a lot earlier. And that would have affected the way that we went about things. So that scoreboard builds a lot of pressure on young athletes, and putting blinkers on to say, don't worry about it. We get 7 at-bats, so do they. Let's take care of the things that we can control. It gives you a great opportunity to sort of not let the distractions take over.
Yeah.
And that, you hear it in so many sports, the top 2 inches. That for us in softball is, I guess, sums up what the top 2 inches is about, is, staying on task and not allowing that scoreboard to take over, because it creates huge pressure.
Yeah, I got a scenario a couple of years ago, under 23s. I was involved with the Auckland team, and we're playing the first game against Southland out on in Christchurch, out on the backfield, and they come out and score 9 in the second innings. We're down 9-1, and the team come in and they're just, the shutters are down, and I'm like, what are we going to do here? And I said, boys, they've got to get us out 18 times. It's a 7 innings game. It's not a 9-hour 45 game or anything like that. They've got to get 18 outs, make them as tough as they can possibly be. And when they realise that, and just don't be the next out. Just do one job. Don't be the next out, and we'll go from there. Don't worry about the end result. Let's just go from there. And we turned it around. They came out the other side, and we ended up winning the game. But you had to break that down, and then they realised that, okay, we've got plenty of time. We can do this. We've got the ability to do this. And I suppose they believed in themselves.
We had a similar thing, Rick, in Whitehorse. You remember the game against Canada. We were 9-2 down in the 5th.
Yeah.
Canada needed 3 outs to run rule us, and it was it was drizzling a little bit. It was hard for our guys to throw, and we made sure that the Canadians went out there and had their turn, and it was for us. Our strategy was, everybody's taking a strike. Okay, make him get us out, and all of a sudden, falls behind. We get a couple of walks. You get a couple of guys on base. You pick up a hit. You score a run. You get momentum. Then everybody starts believing, and we finished that inning 10-9 up. After being in a position where they needed 3 outs for the game. And we end up we won 13-12 because we kicked the conversion.
Yeah. Very, very enlightening, guys. We'll move into a little bit of culture, and we'll rush through it because you're dragging on. I could be here for probably 3 hours, but I don't think everyone else would like that. Jazz, we're going to talk about culture and team values. So we'll start with the junior Black Sox. How do you, obviously you've got team values. How do you establish that through it? And I guess it's quite difficult at the moment when you're in the infancy of a squad and trying to get that whole collaboration between the new team and new players that some of them don't even know each other.
Well, that's what I was talking about earlier, how we've got these school teachers and I guess part of the syllabus throughout colleges is everyone has that, they've tried to create that similar culture in terms of whanaungatanga, having the whānau, making sure that that's an important part of the kids, schooling, things like that are similar for us. It's it's about having respect, in your surroundings, and I think that side of it will come. The values will be pretty easy for us because it's all being taught at school, which is what that was the feedback I got from my 2 mates. So that's not an issue. I think it's more the culture in terms of trying to create a culture within the team. So how do we do that? That's by getting everyone together and just doing fun things. It doesn't have to be, softball initially. It's just doing things that, get the kids to openly communicate with each other. And, for us, it's about finding out their interests. Then we can work from there, because you may find there might be 15 out of the 30 kids have the same interests. So it's sort of, that makes your job half easy. And then, then it's just trying to make everyone else fit, I think. But that's the fun part of coaching. I guess with the kids, as opposed to with with bruised guys, it's a bit different, but it should be similar, but it's at a different scale, different level. So I have no worries about creating a good culture and environment in our side. I'm more concerned about the playing side of things, to see where we're at in terms of our skill level, because I've got my sights still on the Jappers, and we'll find a way to get there, but how we get there is going to be a long task. So work in progress, I guess, and it's just a lot of work, and that's what these kids know, is that it's not going to be easy. So it's just a matter of trying to filter things to them in small bits. Don't want to try and, I guess, bomb them initially right from the start and say, hey, this is where we're at. We're not world champions anymore, blah, blah, blah. And then, it's not about that. It's about, we're a team that just wants to go out there and play the best we can. And like you're saying, worry about that end result at the other end. If we, take care of the processes, then the end result takes care of itself.
Yeah, Mark, how do you call out poor team behaviour or culture in an individual? Is that your job, or you leave that you'd leave that to the senior leadership group of the players?
Yeah. Because the culture is owned by the players, right? So the culture is owned by the athletes, and once you set the standards and you agree on the values, and these sessions take sometimes can take half a day. We'll sit down as a group and we'll talk through how do we want to be viewed as a team, how do we want people to view us, what are the things that are important to us, and it's not something that me or Scoob or Casey or Paddy will put on the guys. It's more about them throwing ideas up on the board. And from that we go through, I guess, the process of elimination to identify and link. Some of them are similar, so you group them together, and then you break it down. And we have 4, values that the guys believe were really important. But from that, it's about, for me, it's about walking the walk as opposed to just talking the talk. There's a lot of people out there that do a lot of talking. But for me, the value is in, the athletes that actually live and breathe it. And the guys that have been a part of my groups for over the years will attest to, one of the phrases that I use with them is, if you want to be the man, be him Monday to Sunday. Be him every day of the week. Don't just be him on a Saturday when you turn up at the park. It's not a light switch that you just flick on every time you come within our group. It's something that you got to live and breathe, because you can't have discipline on a Saturday if it's not in your life Monday to Friday. So about making sure that it's, for me, culture. I've often been asked, what does culture mean to you? And culture for me is what the athletes do when you're not watching. So I used to turn up at Hotaira Park. I can't now because I've cut the trees down, but I used to turn up and go and stand in the trees out on the fence line out the back there, because I noticed when I walked in the park, guys tucked their shirts in, they stood taller, they ran faster. And I don't want them to do that just because I'm there.
Yeah,
I want to see what they do when I'm not there, and so I'd stand in the trees and watch. And, did they run out that pop fly? Did they run out that ground ball? Were they hot dogging on a fly ball to the outfield? Just little things like that, because that speaks volumes about the type of athlete that they are, and the standards that they're setting themselves, because I want them to drive to be a better athlete for themselves, not because just I'm at the park. And anytime I turn up at the park, I tell you what, It's almost like the ghost whisperer that goes through the park.
Yeah.
Bruce here, look out, where I don't want that. I want to see, it's all right that they share that around, but I want to see what they do, every single game. And that, for me, is really what culture is about.
It's the same in the work situation. I know how you feel. Yeah. Rick turns up, they're hustling around and working hard.
They're picking up rubbish
I'll
and
stay with you
stuff.
for this one, Mark, in that, it probably, I can probably relate to it, because every time you ring, I start rolling the arm over and the hamstrings start twitching. But how do you manage disappointment of players non-selection? I'll go to you, then to you, Jazz, because you've obviously got a big crop as well.
That for me, that's all. That's my job, and it's something that I felt was really important when I took over the team. Is that in a high performance culture, I don't believe athletes should learn that they've missed the team in the media, in the social media or anything like that. Guys that miss the team get a personal phone call from me. And I try and I've learned over the years. In the beginning, I waffled and I talked too much. And when you're telling people that they've missed out, you've got to keep it short and succinct. Provide them with some feedback. And what I've been doing over the last few years is I followed up with an email, short email. And it's not a storybook about their faults. It's about three or four areas that we believe that they've fallen short in, and try and keep it positive as much as possible, because it's a really shit sandwich being told you didn't make the team.
Yeah, it's a phone call that in a phone call, once you get through the first 20 seconds of "sorry, mate, you haven't made it," and I'm going to explain why it's a blank. They're not taking anything in.
No. So I also ring the rookies because, I try and all the new guys, I try and alternate it. So because it's a really shit job calling people, telling them that they haven't made the team. And I know 2 or 3 days before doing it, I struggle to sleep. I'm tossing and turning. I'm second guessing. But you go back to trusting the things that you've done. And so, I just try and have a little bit of good with the tough calls. And also, of late, have thrown in a couple of random calls to guys, just because they all know if Bruce calls and you're not a rookie, you're out. So I have called a couple of guys that were sort of established or semi-established, and the tone of those phone calls for the first few minutes was really tense. And I played along with a couple of guys about how tough it is to select the team, and we've got a lot of good athletes, and then you tell them they're in, and it's like, it wasn't very funny. So just I think about keeping it fresh, I think is important. But ultimately, if someone misses a team, it's my job to call them.
What about you, Jazz? Obviously, there's a lot more emotion in the testosterone floating around some 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, we start with a group of 36 kids, and to be honest, it's the numbers get down to your final 15, 16, maybe to 20 pretty quick. And then I guess in the past it's been hard, where I've seen some good players miss the cut with our juniors. But that was only my opinion, and so I think from what has happened, Smalley was doing those dirty calls a little bit. We were doing them I was doing them to a couple of the kids, but like I say, we didn't get to where it was. We had 5 or 6 guys like Brew that when we were right on the fringe, and he had to give them the call to say, hey, he didn't make it. So, but yeah, it's a hard one. It's always a tough one to make that call to whoever it may be. And I just think, and I guess you've seen it too, the way teams have been selected in the past, on the final day after you won the Nationals. That's that's a pretty tough one for a lot of the kids to take too. So to not get any phone call before that, that selection of the team is a pretty hard one. And rightly or wrongly, you should still make a call afterwards and say, hey, the reason you didn't make it, blah, blah, blah. But I think that's something we're going to look at seriously anyway, because I think that's pretty hard to be singled out in front of your peers. And hard for kids, especially at 15 now, because you could mentally wreck them, forever. So it's just one of those things, mate. And obviously, sport is sport, and it happens everywhere. And it's just not one of those calls you want to make, but unfortunately, someone has to miss out.
Yeah, I thought, just touch on that before we got a final question, I thought it was quite awkward in Palmerston after the 18s Nationals, where you had to stand up and then name a squad for the World Championship, and Hutt Valley just won, and it was quite tough. They're happy, but then they were sad for some guys that had missed out, and vice versa. I was there involved with the Auckland team as well, and it was just it was pretty tough, pretty brutal, to be fair, doing that on that last day. And I know you had some time constraints where you had to name a team within the next 2 or 3 days to get it to the organising committee, so that was a bit tough. Before we go to the viewer questions, just something a little bit lighthearted, and please make it as lighthearted as you like. I'll stay with you first, Jazz. What's the most favourite team bonding activity you've been involved with over the years? And it is only 8:30. I'll just say that it's not Coach's Huddle after dark yet.
Team bonding, geez. Are you talking from a juniors perspective, or?
I don't know, juniors, Black Sox, whatever. We've all heard on the buddy beyond the dugout about Nathan on his moped going into a shop or something, or being run off the road, or different things. But
when you're touring, mate, there's a lot of fun things that you get up to, and just being around each other, enjoying each other's companies is a great way to bond. Regardless of what activities you do. We had a couple of good years there where you play a lot of pranks on, you have your gangs and that, and you split the teams into 4 groups or 3 groups or what have you, and we probably had a lot of good pranksters throughout those 10, 15 years, bro. KJ, Kerry Johansson, he was in there. Roman was involved at some point, and those guys are pretty, they're little snakes, they are, but a lot of fun. So, but there's all sorts of things. You probably heard some of the stories from Roman while he's on the dugout about 2004's van getting flowered and things like that. It was a competition within the team.
Yeah.
And it was healthy. It was good. It was healthy, but there were times where it got a bit tense. And I think South Africa, we had a few tense moments out on the touch field, where a couple of our teammates were nearly come to biffs and that. But hey, it was all part of, I guess, being around each other. And how do you get the best out of each other? And that was by pushing each other's buttons any way you could to, get one over them. But yeah, so I don't know, mate. There's so many. Brew might want to touch on a specific one or two, but it's just like I say, it's just about enjoying each other's company, and even over a couple of beers. That's always good team bonding time.
Yeah, bro, I did notice when I answered the question, you sort of sat back in your chair a little bit, and the the lazy boy of truth just opened up a little bit.
Yeah. I came inside. It was getting a bit cold outside. Yeah. I mean, I think, thinking about what Jarrad was talking about there, and and about your question, Rick, is that those events are memories, and they're not scripted. Yeah. And I think that's the best part about, those situations and those memories that you have, is that they've come about because, nothing really works out when you script it too much. It's the impromptu nature of it. There was a time in Japan where we went out to a bar, and I think, I don't know how it was, but Jarrad ended up getting an eye full of whiskey that I was holding onto the whiskey bottle at some ungodly hour. The events, the mopeds in Victoria going all over the island, they're having fun together, and it's about creating environments where people laugh with each other, because fun needs to be a part of success in sport. And they talk about the difference between a high performance culture and high performance environment and team culture is often tension. And Jarrad talked about, on the diamond, on the touch field. I certainly remember, we always had a rule that if we had a big night the night before at 8 o'clock the next morning, and this was driven by one of the Ferret Brigade, Dean Rice, is that at 8 o'clock next morning you had to go out for a run. And I remember in some little town in Canada, after we'd had a session the night before, and we'd gone out for a run, and on the way back from the run, some of the guys from the other gang tackled me, and I went down into a ditch, and they kind of roughed me up a bit, and off they went. It was all fun and games, but I strained my knee, and we had a session that afternoon at a ice skating rink, I think, from memory, Jarrad, where there was kind of like ice skating with tennis balls but no ice. So I guess it's a roller skating rink there, and I couldn't get involved in it. And Don came over and said, "What's going on?" Kind of tried to avoid it, but you can't really lie to the professor. And it's probably the only time I've seen him get really angry. He got the guys together in the middle of the rink, and he almost banned the gangs from there. But I guess as long as you don't get in trouble with the law and you don't get in the front page of the paper, anything's within the boundaries of having fun. But one of the things that in recent times that has really stood out to me in terms of team bonding, in terms of building culture, was we had a camp, probably our most recent camp, where we'd identified nutrition as an area of concern, and we wanted guys to learn a little bit more. So Elliot, the guy that works with us for nutrition, had set a challenge that he gave the guys a briefing around food and food groups and stuff. And in their teams, they had to go and cook a meal for certain members of the management group. And they got to choose who they got to pick in terms of management group, who they were cooking for based on their performance and other activities during the day. So it became really strategic. And guys picked management members that they thought would be softer on them. But what the byproduct of it was that we actually saw 4 or 5 awesome meals cooked by these groups that really put their heads together and worked hard to come up with a plan and a meal that linked into, sort of a high performance meal that could be used before a game. And it really made them think a little bit, and they worked really hard together, and we got some great outcomes. So, there's a number of different ways that you can build things around, team culture and team bonding. And if there's a learning aspect to it as well, I think, it's really positive. And maybe that's just because my hair's gone grey now. We're a little more risk adverse.
I think
I was just saying, Rick. Sorry, Brutus did mention, if I can, just he mentioned the whiskey eye. Okay, but ironically, that's where our culture changed. Was that very next day on that tour, because our culture had always been about, the liquid refreshments. And it was that very next day after that night out we had in Japan, we had a pretty serious team gathering, and that's where we laid down the law. And that actually was the start of, the greatest bloody dynasty that there ever was, in our team at that stage, to this day. And that's why we were so successful, because we ironed out probably one of the most bad habits that affected our national teams on trips away. And it was awesome. It was awesome to have been a part of that, I suppose. Not from, getting the whiskey in the eye, but to actually, it was from the older guys, some of the, the likes of Brew and Puppy, I think, was a big driver of it.
AJ.
And KJ. And yeah, so it was, you know, and that's where everything flipped for us. And from there on out, you know, and that was under Dom's tenure as well. But then from there on out, things just changed and changed for the better. And, you know, yeah, we still get involved in those liquid refreshments every now and then. Yeah, so
just more sociable. Just more sociable drink than let's get on it.
Yeah.
I think there was a tour where My Body is a Temple, Dean Rice, where we found him in that hedge, wasn't it? In the middle of the night.
Yeah, I think it might have been. But yeah, if you want to try the whiskey in the eye, people don't, because it stings for a bloody days.
And the only thing I'll add to that question about team bonding is like any Kiwi team with a guitar, and it's team bonding time. Especially when you're away, you seem to think you're a hell of a lot better singer than you are at home. And us Pacquiao guys know every Māori word of every song. Apparently, we just jam along with you and Bevan.
Yeah.
But don't want to hold you up too much longer, guys. We'll probably just 10 more minutes. We'll just go to a few fan questions, if you like. And I'll probably start with you, or just alternate a little bit, Mark. But Jazz, jump in if you want. As you're not a full-time club or rep coach, how do you keep on top of all the relevant changes and skill sets or whatever to keep up to play with, I suppose, the off-field stuff with the Black Sox and the technical stuff, but also on-field, you know, that bam decision making at third base and things like that.
We certainly identified after our last campaign that I hadn't spent enough time on the diamond. So what towards the end of the second half of last season, I jumped in with Porirua and helped coach them at the PK tournament, because it had been a couple of years since I'd been on the diamond. And, you know, as you rightly point out, Rick, you know, it's being able to make those bang decisions on the spot without second guessing yourself. And in the review of Prague, you know, I'd identified there'd been some times where I second guessed myself. So, you know, that's something that I'm personally working on around trying to improve myself, is make sure that I get enough time on the diamond. And, you know, all going well, we'll do the same again this year, depending on whether, and if we get an opportunity, I'm sure we will, to tour next year, hopefully with the announcement today. But it probably sort of April, May time is when we're looking to get game time. And it's really important for not only the guys, because, you know, we're probably going to have a lot of guys that are going to debut them, but also for me and Scoob being on the diamond. You know, I've also taken the opportunity to try and reach out to other national team coaches. So, you know, in different sports, to pick their brains around, you know, the whole campaign stuff about, you know, development, about change, how they manage change, how they manage athletes. So, you know, and two specific people that I've spoken to Nolan Taurua and Steve Henson, you know, about different sports, different campaigns. Obviously, Knowles with how she turned around the Ferns, and then Steve with, you know, how he took over a winning team and carried on to win again.
Hey, Jez, sorry, you got anything to add, mate?
No, I was just saying, you're talking about the coaching, you know, because I'm in I guess, satellite area a little bit. It's, you know, I'm lucky enough to have guys on the ground in the major centres where, you know, I trust, you know, I played with them a lot and they're involved in coaching as well. So it's just a matter of, you know, I'm touching base with them, you know, at least once a month. But as the season, like now, it's a little bit more often. So it's just keeping tabs on, you know, certain athletes and just making sure that, you know, they are, especially our squad members, making sure they're doing the right things, or, you know, trying to do the right thing. But, you know, we did stress to the boys, if there's any issues, give us a call. But yeah, on diamond stuff, you know, I'm probably, I need a bit of work with that. But being, I think, over in the new year, being at the ballpark and watching the kids is just, getting back into the groove again. And then obviously, if we're able to participate at Easter, we'll be there coaching if we can. And then obviously if the Tour de Australia, comes to fruition, then, that'll be a, good chance to work with the guys, on the field as well. So, and, and for our coaching staff too, is to get them, out there together.
While you're running hot, Jazz, another question here. As a national coach, do you feel there's a need to spread the selections of the national team players around the country? And, could this possibly affect a player from a region where there's already a lot of players selected and probably a wider training squad we're talking about? So you're talking about your wider squad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we went to Dunedin last year, and I thought it was important because I believe there was a bit of an oversight. There were a lot of guys from Southland who were getting overlooked, who were, when I look at history in tournaments, their name had always popped up there, but they'd never previously been involved in any of our squads. So that's why, we made sure that we're covering, as much as we can, and, trying to, get the feelers out there for if there's any coaches or anything, that recommend having a look at, different athletes, say from your Manawatu's, your Hawke's Bay's over there, old mate Chubb's over there, and he's pretty honest about, kids. So it's always great to have a yarn to him. But you're always going to find that talented kid who you'll never see though sometimes. And there's probably tens of them out there that, that play and potentially in the Auckland squads. Auckland generally send 3 teams to their regional tournaments, and then they turn up in the development team or something like that. So that's always a benefit to us too. So we try and if the kid's got talent, if he looks like he's got something in him, then we definitely look at him for sure.
Yes, so I suppose to answer your question, or to reword the question a little bit, so you would feel that there's a need to spread opportunity around, not selection around. So you're not going to put some token people in from different regions just to share the love around the country, but you're certainly wanting to make sure that there's opportunities, as say for the Southland, the Dunedin and the Manawatu and the Hawke's Bay, that there's opportunity for kids there to be able to put their hand up.
Yeah, and that's why I think the regional format's good, because you get to see those kids. If it was nationals, then a lot of kids won't make the national teams, So, so that's where it's quite beneficial that COVID's helped us out in a sense, but not you guys up there. Sorry, but
yeah, thanks. Yeah, rub it in, mate. Yeah. Mark, what skills are you able to transfer as a player to a coach?
Preparation, competitiveness, drive. Picking pitches is probably the biggest one for me. And the influence that can have on the game itself. So there's been numerous games that we've had where pitchers have been so consumed and wrapped up about hiding their grips with me standing at third that they forget about who's at the plate, and they miss on their pitches, so it gives our hitters a better opportunity. So influencing a game that way, I talked a little bit about that before. Those are probably some of the key skills that obviously along with tactics and strategy and playing the game, but I think influencing a game through picking pitches is probably the biggest thing.
Jazz?
From a player to coach, well, I guess the picking pitches are now under 15s and 17 grades, man. It's there's a bit more, they need to learn before they get there. But you share things like that to them, and the kids do find it takes them, I guess, their attention away from what they're actually trying to do. Whereas, as a senior athlete or adult athlete, it's a little bit easier because it's all part and parcel of, you're at battle, you're on deck, I guess, sites as well. So, but yeah.
What about, do you feel that you can relate to them? Is that a big thing? I know when I was a younger coach, and I try to even this year with an Auckland under 17 team I'm coaching, and Isaac Fletcher kindly agreed to come on board as an assistant. He's relevant to them because they see him playing on a Saturday. They know he used to play, recently played for the Black Sox. He's still playing rep softball, and they can relate to him. So in a tough situation, like I say with the under 23s, when a person stands there in front of you and he says, "Look, guys, I know exactly how you feel. I've been in this situation before." It reassures them, especially for the younger guys that you're involved with, Jazz.
Yeah, and because a lot of these guys probably don't even know who we are. They know Curtis because he's up there a little bit playing, but and that's for us to give them a bit of a history lesson, not to blow our trumpets, but it's to see where we've come from, and then that way, that will, I'm sure will help the kids see what's in front of them a little bit, and then from there, then we'll be able to sort of share our knowledge and the best we can with them. So that's and we've talked about that again. It's like, how do we? The kids don't even know who we are, but I mean, Graham Henry never played. Rugby.
Don't they go on Those Were the Days website, mate?
Hey?
Those Were the Days Facebook page. Don't they go on there and YouTube you guys?
I have no idea, man. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that works, but yeah.
I didn't realise Mark used to have a mullet and a moustache. It's amazing what you learned during COVID.
Yeah.
Tom Selleck, mate. You know very well, right?
Hey, thanks, guys. Just one last question. It probably is a little bit of a controversial one, and I'll start with you, Mark. And this is a question from a viewer. Is baseball a threat to New Zealand maintaining a top standing at international level softball?
No, I don't think so. Do you want me to elaborate? I actually think there's room for us to coexist as sports. That it happens in plenty of countries around the world. When you think down to, or you look down to kids that are playing at 12, 13, 14, it's okay for them. I think it's okay for them to play softball Saturday, baseball Sunday, and carry on through. I think it will help us improve the skill set if they're playing more ball. But they will get to a stage where they've got to make a choice. And at the moment, call me cynical, but I don't think there's much of a choice. There's the Tuatara, for instance, have got a long way to go before they've got a credible offering. So, I think, at grassroots level now, and it's something that we need to work as a sport where, we create an environment where it's okay. We're at the moment there's still a little bit of, it's a little bit taboo, but I now that I think there's different leadership on the other side, you're not going to get the major league trials in the middle of our under 18 tournaments or stupid stuff like that, and I think there is space for us to both coexist.
Yeah, I think it's good for our especially our younger kids. We've looked at a lot of baseball players in the last 6, 7, 8 years. We've wanted them to be a part of our campaigns, but they made a decision they didn't want to. Cole was one after his first campaign with us in 14. But I just, like Bruce said, it's the skill sets. They're still getting that repetition. They're getting repetition fielding balls. Yeah, maybe different. You get a bit more time in baseball, but the basic skills are the same. So it's just a matter of making sure that they're doing it consistently, every day. Well, every other day if they can. So I think it's good, and yeah, hopefully that it can work out between both codes down the line somewhere.
Yeah, I think, and I'll just elaborate on that a little bit. yeah, I think we can coexist, especially at the junior level. You know, I listened to Wally's podcast with Chopper and Damien a little while back, you know, and he was quite a hated man in you know, the Wellington Hutt Valley area. And all he was just trying to do was, you know, go coach his kid. And if my kid was playing basketball, I'd be coaching him, or you know, if he was playing hockey, I'd be coaching him. And he just wanted to, it's a diamond sport after all. But the only thing I have, and this isn't a dig at baseball, it's to both softball and baseball. Don't make the kids choose until they have to. And Brutus touched on it. You know, he used to give me the shits where, you know, we're trying to name an Auckland team, and they're having a New Zealand baseball training camp that weekend of the Nationals. Just so happens, you know, it was almost premeditated that they're making the kids choose. Don't make them choose. Let them do both. And then if they're good enough, you know, we'll wish them all the best, and we'll see them off at the airport if they go and play college baseball or something like that and have a crack at it, you know. And we've got to be realistic, you know. In the winter time, we're sitting down watching TV. There's two of the best things to do in the winter is watch the Little League baseball and the Women's Softball World Series, the College World Series. So all the girls want to do is go to college and play softball, and all the kids want to do is go to college and play baseball. But you know, we're both great sports, and we can coexist. But you know, if there's anyone from the administration watching, that's all I'll say is that don't make them choose until they have to. Let them do both, because it's going to be good for them and it's going to be good for the game. So thanks, guys. Sorry, we've gone over a little bit too much. It's even got dark down your way, Mark.
I just turned the light on.
Yeah, exactly. But thanks, guys. It's been really enlightening. We appreciate your time up here in the 09 region. And hopefully we can catch up soon and get together and talk some more softball. But in the beer tent having a lemonade now. I know you guys don't drink too much after the game.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, Gareth should be back on here shortly, I hope. I might have fallen asleep. We've been on for so long.
He's over there in the corner. There he is.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks for listening. And we'll get this up online on our YouTube channel as well for anybody that wants to check it out later. But thank you very much to you three for being involved tonight, and we really appreciate you spending your time giving us some insights on what you do. Thanks
Gareth.
everybody.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Rick, thanks, mate.
Thanks, Jez. Thanks, Brute.
Sweet. I'll be in touch, Gareth.
Yep. We'll
just
have
with
a chat.
Easter. Once we get together with having